Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you?
Very well, very well.
Good.
But we have to look at the good news and the bad.
Yeah, there's both.
We'll find some good news. You know, I told somebody, and I've mentioned it on the air, we always have good news because even when it's bad news, I like to argue, well, that's just going to wake up more people to wise up. So, but I don't think we have horror stories here, but scary, as usual, typical stuff. But we want to start off with a, well, it's been in the news, but we looked at a Politico article, and that is preemptive pardons people in the Biden administration.
Wow.
But we knew they did a lot of dumb and evil and probably illegal things, but nobody's tried it for it, and they deny everything. So, but I guess you can pardon people because someday they might be a bad guy.
Yeah.
What if you get a lifetime pardon?
That's what I need.
but anyway, my guess is, because a few of them are obviously in trouble if it comes to Trump and his staff following through of those who committed crimes, and there were plenty in the Department of Justice, especially in all those investigations and the things that they did. It was just horrible. So it's lining up. They're trying to protect it. It's not like only Democrats do that. Republicans have dealt with the pardons, and they will in the future. But this was a little more blatant. You know, well, they've never even been charged. So, but anyway, I think that they probably will do it because, well, if they do it or don't do it, it'll indicate how scared they are.
Yeah.
And right now, I think they're setting the stage to give out some pardons on crimes that they have not technically been admitted to or convicted of.
Yeah, it's a fascinating argument, that's for sure. Now, put up this clip. We noticed this sort of made the rounds yesterday, and everyone is talking about it. This is the Politico article. Biden's White House is discussing preemptive pardons for those in Trump's crosshairs. Now, being Politico, they're going to carry water for Biden. That's a given. So basically, as you can see in this kind of Soviet kind of headline, it's not because they were worried about them doing something wrong. It's the evil Trump is going to persecute. Good thing that the Biden people never tried to persecute Trump while he was out of office. But so go to the next one. This is what it's all about. White House officials are carefully weighing the extraordinary step, if you can put that second clip up, extraordinary step of handing out blanket pardons to those who've committed no crimes, both because it could suggest impropriety, only fueling Trump's criticism. It's all Trump's fault, right? And because those offered preemptive pardons may reject them. Now, that's the interesting thing, because if you think about it, Dr. Paul, I don't know that it's happened. There have been individual examples, of course, the Nixon one being the most famous. I think Reagan pardoned a couple. I think Clinton pardoned a couple. But this sort of unprecedented blanket pardon of groups of people, it sort of seems like it would cast a shadow on the whole Biden administration, starting with his son. They're a bunch of outlaws. You know, they're a bunch of, why we've never had this kind of thing.
But what will happen is there'll be two reactions. One that says, go get them, they're bad people, and the other is going to say, what are you doing? You're breaking the rules and all this kind of stuff. So it'll be a political thing. But I think that daily now we're seeing more people breaking away from the dictates of the Democratic leadership. I mean, people are speaking out, and some people say, well, maybe they're just coming up and telling the truth, and another one say, no, they're just getting set for cleaning the slate and marching on to the next thing that they want to fib about.
Yeah. Well, some of the names that are being thrown around are pretty interesting now. Put on that next clip now. Part of them are the January 6th committee, but I thought they were just trying to get to the truth, Dr. Paul. I'll go to the next, I'll go to the previous one, please. Yeah, here we go, thanks. So those who could face exposure include such members of Congress as January 6th committee as Adam Schiff. Well, what could he possibly have done wrong? Well, we remember some of the stuff he said because he lied and said that he was in the Schiff when he was in the secure facility, that he had seen proof that Trump was involved in Russiagate, and it was a fact, a lie. Liz Cheney, the lies that she told in the January 6th committee, and Trump previously said she should go to jail for them. and all of this. So anyway, so also mentioned by Biden's aides is a pardon for Anthony Fauci. Now, Dr. Paul, why would Anthony Fauci need a pardon?
But why don't they look at this as positive? If they're innocent and falsely charged, this is my opportunity to tell the people the truth. But instead, they don't want to even talk about it anymore, and they want to be exempt in case by accident they did something wrong.
Yeah.
They want the protection.
But this whole idea of pardoning Fauci, it's a way of sort of getting past this whole era where all of the things, we spent at least 2 years covering the constant flip-flops, the constant lies of Fauci, how he manipulated the country, how many lives were taken away prematurely because he said, don't use ivermectin, don't use hydroxychloroquine, all these things. Come take this other special drugs, it will kill you a lot faster. So all of these things that he's done, all of these horrors that we covered for 2 years, and now they're going to say, it's all right, give him a pardon.
Yeah, that's what they plan to do, and it remains to be seen how inclusive it'll be, because maybe they mentioned 3 key names, but there must be some others involved too.
Yeah.
They might come up and say, "Hey, look, if you're going to get those off, they're just going to dump it on us."
What about all those former intelligence officials who said the Hunter Biden laptop was fake? They lied.
There's 51 people.
Yeah.
They put it in writing and a signature on it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think they knew what they were doing.
Yeah,
they figured they'd never be caught.
Yeah. Well, I thought maybe we will take a little trip down memory lane, because I feel actually a little bit uplifted by the idea that Fauci may feel a little bit threatened. So let's return. I have a few clips that I thought we would just put up to remind people of the kinds of things that Fauci did back just a couple of years ago. So we remember, lest we feel sympathetic for this man, what happened and how he destroyed much of this country. Let's put on that, cue up that first one if you can. Let's just watch and talk for a little. Here's Fauci on your vaccination. Get your vaccination.
When people are vaccinated, they can feel safe that they are not going to get infected. I got infected about 2 weeks ago. It was my 3rd infection, and I had been vaccinated and boosted a total of 6 times.
So here, this is the classic flip-flop Fauci. If you get this vaccination, you will not get the virus. Cut to a few months later.
That's his confession. He just made a little mistake, affected a few other people.
Yeah.
That's why I always argue, local choice. Let the family, let the individual make decisions that may harm themselves.
Yeah.
But when you put a person like this who became a dictator, and he was bipartisan, he had fooled a lot of people for a lot of years. And I think he was paid rather well to lie.
Yeah, almost $500,000 a year.
I wonder what he was getting from the pharmaceutical.
All that other stuff too. That was millions.
Yeah.
Because they had that sweetheart deal. Well, let's do another Fauci. If we do that second one, let's just go through this. This is the one where he. Oh yeah, okay. I'm just going to set this up before we start it. So this is just months before COVID hit, and he's talking to someone about what do you do if you want to avoid an airborne virus. And so the guy's asking Dr. Fauci, what do I need to do? And it's interesting to hear what the doctor's reaction, Fauci's reaction when he asked about a mask. Check this out.
And the best way for me to prevent getting an infectious disease and having to have you as my doctor is what? Wearing a mask?
No.
You do that?
No.
If I can see they're ready to sneeze or cough, walk away.
You avoid all the paranoid aspects and do something positive. A, good diet. B, you don't smoke, I know. I know you don't drink, at least not very much, so that's pretty good. Get some exercise. I know that you don't get as much exercise as you should.
That's correct.
Get good sleep. I think that the normal, low-tech, healthy things are the best thing that you can do, David, is stay healthy.
All right, well, I'm going to try to do that. And
this is just before it hit, And so go to the
next
next one. This is just after it hit. He completely changes everything. This is what he thinks you should do then.
With Dr. Walensky, but I'd give her the opportunity also. We get asked all the time, should we be double masking? The CDC makes recommendations based on data that they accumulate because it's a science-based organization. Right now, they are looking at these different options of mask wearing. In the meantime, as I often get asked, should you be wearing 2 masks or 1 mask? And I say, there's no recommendation. However, there are many people who take the common sense approach. If you're talking about a physical barrier, and as the CDC recommends, you want at least 2 layers within the mask as a physical barrier, and you feel maybe more of a physical barrier would be better, there's nothing wrong with people wearing 2 masks. I often myself wear 2 masks. Can we make
He's
a
had
general
6 shots and 12 boosters, and he's still gotten it 3 times. So, I mean,
He is our leader.
Yeah, it's funny, but it's not funny because he harmed a lot of people with this. He made a lot of people crazy because they had 12 masks on and they, choked to death practically.
He's speaking. He threw out the word there, science. We base everything on science. So that's a bit of a fib, and it's all directed for special interests and special favors to him.
Yeah.
To keep his job.
Keep his job and keep that gravy train running.
Right.
But, we could probably sit here for 3 hours putting up all of his flip-flops. We covered it I think so well. I think we did a good job over those 2 years. It was probably our psychological lifeline to try to expose these people. But there's one person who has been the bane of Fauci's existence, and it's someone we both know. And I had to get a couple of clips from this because I would bet, I don't know for sure, my guess is that Senator Paul is sitting there somewhere with a smile on his face, seeing Fauci back in the hot seat. Let's just do a couple of trips down memory lane of Senator Rand Paul and some of his excellent work on Fauci.
From the very beginning, Anthony Fauci knew he was involved with funding this lab, and he did everything possible. It's throughout our government. 8 different agencies in our government are covering up their support for this lab in Wuhan. It's ongoing as we speak. Even though we've had unanimous Congress declassify the information, I have unclassified information that's being withheld from me to this day. But we have evidence, yes, that they were dishonest, that Anthony Fauci lied in hearings to me, which is a felony, punishable up to 5 years. We now have emails that show him saying that he knew it was gain of function, that the virus looked manipulated, and that he was worried that this came from the Wuhan lab. February 1st of 2020. Then he spent the last 3 years saying nothing to see here. We also know that there was a safety committee that should have reviewed this, and we know that Anthony Fauci went around the safety committee. The safety committee set up in place to make sure this wouldn't happen, never saw the Wuhan funding because Anthony Fauci allowed the funding to go around the safety committee. This is a bombshell revelation, and this will eventually bring down Anthony Fauci.
Yeah, I think that's important because that's what you can be indicted on. And I wanted to do one more Rand Paul one because this is a great kind of summation of Rand versus Fauci. This is where, I'll just set it up, this is where Senator Paul attacks Fauci, and we reported on this at the time. Remember some documents came out. They were conspiring behind the scenes to badmouth people like Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who's now going to head the NIH, which is a little bit of justice, one of Trump's best picks. But they conspired to badmouth these scientists who were challenging Fauci. And let's listen to this. Let's listen to this next one. This is really, I think, a really good Rand Paul clip. He really takes him to the woodshed.
In an email exchange with Dr. Collins, you conspire, and I quote here directly from the email, to create a quick and devastating published takedown of 3 prominent epidemiologists from Harvard, Oxford, and Stanford. Apparently there's a lot of fringe epidemiologists at Harvard, Oxford, and Stanford. And you quote in the email that they, or from Dr. Collins, and you agree that they are fringe. And immediately there's this takedown effort. A published takedown, though, doesn't exactly conjure up the image of a dispassionate scientist. Instead of engaging them on the merits, you and Dr. Collins sought to smear them as fringe and take them down. And not in journals, in lay press. This is not only antithetical to the scientific method, it's the epitome of cheap politics, and it's reprehensible, Dr. Fauci. Do you really think it's appropriate to use your $420,000 salary to attack scientists that disagree with you?
Great clip, wasn't it? That was a...
Yeah, there is a sense of justice now. The Department of Justice is in the midst of a transition of changing, and there may be some follow-up on this. And also Bhattacharya, was NIH.
Yeah, he'll head NIH.
So he's sort of in a, and you still read it in the media who are still attacking all these people that they'll go over the names and say, and then there were these conspiracy people, and they would name the people that we followed and wrote, and now they're getting a little bit of attention, proper attention.
Yeah. People like Dr. Malone, who we met at Mises Institute a few months ago. So there is a little bit of justice, It's easy to be down on things. I want to do a couple of last clips on this, Dr. Paul, just to see what you thought about them. Now, this is the arguments being made. We only have one more video. What's that last video? Let's put on that last video. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, this is perfect, because I think this is a setup. This is a couple years ago, 2021, and this is where Fauci was on Face the Nation, and he's asked a question, and watch his very, very nervous response.
So anybody who spends lies and threatens and all that theater that goes on with some of the investigations and the congressional committees and the Rand Pauls and all that other nonsense, that's noise, Margaret. That's noise. I know what my job is.
Senator Cruz told the Attorney General you should be prosecuted.
Yeah. I have to laugh at that. I should be prosecuted. What happened on January 6th, Senator?
Do you think
he looks, you can take it off. He looks so confident there, but didn't you notice, maybe that's just pop psychology. He had a look on his face that was a little bit afraid.
He certainly did. He looks like he was on the defensive, but they didn't know what to do. So if it had been a vice president, they might have heard some giggling to cover up.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, our current one. Yeah. Anyway, it's interesting. The final question about it, I guess, if you skip the next clip and go to the one that says, however, some congressional Democrats, because some of them are realizing the implications, and you mentioned this before the show. If you can find that one, I know I'm sending you running ragged over there. However, some congressional Democrats, including those who may be in Trump's political crosshairs, are uneasy about the idea of being granted a pardon that they're not seeking. I would urge the president not to do that, Adam Schiff said. I think it would seem defensive and unnecessary. He is a politician, and he realizes the implications.
He might as well pursue the lies.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Just say enough. Convince the people.
It paints a target on his back.
Right.
What did he do wrong? Why does he need a pardon?
I wonder how often this has happened when it's so clear cut. Most of the time, they're figures that the public knows about, and they might not know the final verdict or whatever, but they know that at least there was a crime up there, and that's what they're going to be protected against and pardoned for. But they don't mention it.
Yeah, they don't. Well, it'll be interesting to see. Well, the next thing we want to do is we want to do a little bit more good news. It's almost too much good news today. But this is an article that our good friend Dave DeCamp put up on anti-war. If you can put that up there. House Speaker Mike Johnson rejects Biden's request for additional Ukraine spending. Johnson rejected a request from Biden to include additional spending. That's $24 billion. That's not too much. $24 billion. He rejects the idea of putting it in the continuing resolution that Congress is expected to pass before the end of the year. So he did stand up and say no. So that's a good sign.
Some of it is trying to put it back in some inventory that was designed to protect us. Yeah. And if you look at that, you wonder how much of that is even necessary. Yeah. What are they building, tanks and storing them here in case the tanks attack us or something?
The Canadian tanks.
But it's still another excuse to put the money in. And I think it's actually a slush fund.
Yeah.
Because Ukraine they wanted an extra $8 billion they want, but they've gotten $16 billion from our inventory.
Yeah.
So, but the Ukrainians, when they get back on their feet again, they're going to pay us back for all this. They're going to take care of us.
So they're going to pay BlackRock back, aren't they?
Yeah.
With all their, that's what Lindsey Graham said. They got a lot of minerals there. They're going to pay BlackRock back. But you're right, and I did actually highlight this in the next clip. Is that $16 billion to replace U.S. military equipment? Because what that is, that's part of the money laundering aspect of it. We send them junky stuff that's about to expire, and then we put in a purchase order for the Beltway bandits for the military-industrial complex to get some shiny new, much more expensive weapons. That's how they keep this sort of money laundering machine
Don't let
alive.
any weapon go to waste.
Yeah, that's right.
Keep it in circulation.
Yeah. The only thing that's not funny for is if you're sitting in a foxhole somewhere in the middle of winter and you're Ukrainian and you're having a terrible time. But Johnson's rationale, I think, is solid. He said, as we predicted, and as I said to all of you weeks before the election, if Donald Trump is elected, it will change the dynamic of the Russian war on Ukraine, and we're seeing that happen. So basically he means that this war is now for, the people have spoken, and they've said they believe that Donald Trump will handle this war much better than Biden is, so he doesn't want to get out ahead.
Yeah, but we have to be hopeful, but not overly optimistic, because, I think this fellow by the name of Keith Kellogg, and he has, it looks like an appointment to the envoy to this complex, keep up with all the details of it. And I don't know what will happen there. Right now, it looks like nobody's saying much about it. And I think he can be qualified as a Russian hawk.
He's a hawk, and the weird thing is, like you pointed out, he used to work for Pence. Trump hates Pence. Why would you have his top guy there? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, Trump didn't think much of Pence either.
Yeah.
But I made him vice president, but that's a different story.
But he is a hawk, and so hopefully, people argue, well, he has to do what the boss says. Okay, that's fine. But he's the guy, I think he wanted a no-fly zone. He wanted more weapons. Maybe he's changed his tune, who knows? But the other thing I wanted to point out about this, Dr. Paul, is on the one hand, they're not going to send more weapons. So what does that mean? The administration, to go to the next one, is putting on the fast track everything they can find. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says Biden told him to oversee a massive surge of weapons deliveries to Ukraine before his term ends. We're giving away every single gun and grenade. We're going to get invaded by Canada. They'll take us over.
Just put it on the account, charge account. We'll take care of that later. We'll let the next generation really worry about it.
Yeah. Terrible. So, and the other thing that you were going to point out too is if you put that second to last clip up from Hedge, go ahead. I think you have that in front of you now. The Blinken ramps up clip. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, Blinken ramps up pressure for Zelensky to get younger people into the fight. We're certainly not going to send American people over there because that would be not very popular. So, yes, they're protecting their young people. They didn't want their 18 to 15-year-olds.
Yeah.
Why did they want to kill anybody? Yeah. Why did they want to fight that war? And where are they now? They still pretend we're on the verge of victory.
Yeah.
So this is so bad. And here it is. We should be there. Now we're micromanaging it. We give them all the money. We put all the bills on the American people. And now we're telling them, well, who gets to be put in the front lines and have a big increase in the chances of being killed? Oh, we'll decide that. Why do you guys not send your 18-year-olds?
Yeah.
We don't need them.
Yeah.
I had argued one time when I was fighting the draft. I said, if you're going to do the draft, you really should start with the age of 65. And argue, well, they've had a good life, so why don't we say, oh no, we're going to send the 18-year-olds. We don't want them to ever enjoy what it's like. And when you think of, I don't even want to think about how many young people, Americans and young people around the world die from senseless, wicked wars.
Yeah. Well, I know you were on with Luke yesterday. I was on Luke Rudkowski's show right after you, and I mentioned, because we did discuss this topic, and when I was young, I used to watch, believe it or not, the old World War II films, but the documentary, not the films about it. And I remember toward the very end when you saw these little kids that Hitler sent out. He knew the war was lost. He was sending out kids from the Hitler Youth, putting a gun in their hand and letting them get blown up. It sort of reminds me of that. It's very, very sad.
That's when the epitome of nihilism. There is no truth and there's no righteousness, there's no right or wrong. So it doesn't faze them in a minute. It's just, I don't know what they do in the final moments, wondering what's going on. What a tragedy.
Yeah, terrible.
It's the authority of the state. And I am convinced that, yes, the people have a responsibility because they're supposed to be able to restrain the government. But it's really the neglect of that and the governments and the special interests and the people who are making the money, the weapons and all these things, and then they concoct all these other things, patriotic things that they say, well, if you don't do it, you don't support the troops and you don't care. You have to protect America. All the nonsense. But we ought to try some people for that.
Yeah.
And of course, the only place they can be tried is in the voting process, and that's a little bit difficult to really end up with justice there. But I would say some justice came out of this last election.
Yeah, a little bit. I just hope it continues. Well, I'm going to close out my time in the studio for the week by reminding our viewers once again, if you put up that very last clip, that we have been given matching funds by a very generous donor. We're trying to raise before December 27th. He's given us a heavy deadline. He's got $100,000 up there, and we can match it. That means every $10 you give us will be $20. Every $100 is $200. So asking you, please help us keep the Ron Paul Liberty Report alive. It costs a lot of money to run a studio. I tell you guys, it really does. And help us keep doing what we do, which is a lot of conferences, which is our student seminars, and we've got a lot of big things planned for next year. So please, click the link in the description, make a tax-deductible contribution. It'll count toward your taxes of this year. You'll do some good for a good cause, and you'll keep a little bit of money out of the war machine's pockets. So it's a win-win.
One of our goals is trying to get the truth out about our foreign policy, who's starting what and why. And the one thing is they never change their tune, because the prevailing idea still today, even though there's some dissent from this, is that Russia invaded Ukraine, and that's the reason this all happened. And yet endlessly they keep talking about that and say it's all Russia's fault, but they never admit the truth on our participation, our CIA operations around the world, and the setting up. And it's not just Ukraine, it's not just Vietnam and Korea and all these other places that we've been, Middle East. It just goes on and on. And from the beginning, they must know they're not going to be super successful. They really don't think, oh, well, next year we're going to be able to take over and they'll be our friends and part of our empire. So they probably kid themselves that we are really spreading the goodness of America, which is a lie, and they're lying to themselves because they get away with it. But they also pursue it, and the American people, unfortunately, keep going along with this. And it really ends when the people finally put their foot down and say, no more funding. And that's how Vietnam finally ended after all those years and all those deaths. Finally, the Congress got the message. Where? From some good politicians that were in Washington or elsewhere? No, it came from the people who finally had to go to the streets and demonstrate how idiotic the whole war was, and the killing had to stop. That did end, but but it didn't end forever. They worked hard to eliminate that issue, that image of losing the war in Vietnam. What are we going to do? Well, it was said that the Middle East wars would correct that. That's why we had to really declare war in the Middle East and change all those countries. And believe me, we're no better off. And we're no better off in Ukraine. We're worse off ever since we've gotten super involved. And we totally ignored all the promises that we participated in under NATO and as a country of why we are not going to go up and badger Russia and get on their borders and threaten them with our weapons, and yet we did not uphold the promises that we made to them. So what we need to do is continue this effort, which is occurring to a degree right now. We want the truth of things, and the truth is we should have never gone to Ukraine. It was never really winnable, and the sooner people realize that, we don't want another president coming up, and they should be treated like Johnson treated Biden. No, we're not going to get any more money for Ukraine. It's not worth the effort. It's time we took care of our own people, and it's time that we concentrated on promoting peace and prosperity. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.